is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 564. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources. I am a warrior, not a coward. And joining me on the line, just like every week, another warrior. It's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, we did it.
We indeed are the champions. We had the first of, I think, many at this point. I mean, this was so fun. CFB Podcast Showdown, where it was you, me, and Andrew Beckstrom in a 3-on-3 Zendikar Rising draft against Lords of Limited. So that's Ethan and Ben, and Alex Nikolic. So they're third, who Court of Calls. So all of us, write articles, do podcasts for CFB, and it seemed like a natural fit. I wouldn't call the Lords of Limited our rivals, but there's definitely, we definitely got a little bit of we hear about when we disagree with them. Their fans let us know, and I'm sure the reverse is also true. So it was good to settle for once and for all.
Yeah,
who is right about Limited?
And that's what happened, right? Like that's what we won. But besides dinner.
It was awesome. Yeah, we ended up narrowly defeating them 5-4. Me and you went 2-1. BK went 1-2. Alex went 2-1. Ben went 1-2, and Ethan unfortunately didn't end up with a great deck and went 0-3. He didn't pick up a win. So, I mean it was a great team draft. Like it was just a ton of fun. We got to all kind of huddle up after the draft and discuss our decks and build our decks. Like do I main deck negate? Do I that sort of thing, and it was cool. We ended up drafting. I drafted blue-black rogues, like a very aggressive rogues deck. Had some good rogues payoffs. You drafted a very good black-white clerics deck with double relic vial, a bunch of creatures. You would have killed for a couple 2-drop clerics. I don't think you had enough of those.
Yeah, I didn't have enough. Yep.
You had to play a bunch of Mesa Lynxes instead, which I actually think were totally fine in your deck, by the way.
Okay.
The way it played out. And then BK's deck was like blue, green, splash, black kicker, but he was short, I think, like a good payoff where like his deck ended up being a little bit clunkier than he wanted it to be. So we got to battle against Alex's very good red, white warriors deck. Actually, after round one of my predictions was Alex would 3-0 or 2-1, and it would kind of be on us to defeat Ethan and Ben, because I thought Alex's deck was certainly the best on their team.
It looks like a real draft deck, yeah.
Yeah, so the three best decks I'm very sure of are mine, Alex's, and yours, because we just had the 3 2-color good draft decks.
Yeah.
Right? Like red, white warriors, black, white clerics, and blue, black rogues. And then the 3 decks that I did not expect to do as well that I also had the worst records were the 3 3-color decks. Ethan was kind of on like green, white, splash, red. Ben was on green, red, splash, black, and BK was on blue, green, splash, black. So the 3 clunkier decks lost to the 3 more streamlined decks, so that's kind of how it ends up happening.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that in a minute. Let's talk about, we got to tell the main topic of the show this week is going to be the M21 Sunset show. We didn't have a chance to do it before the cards came out, for Zendikar, and we decided that at that time it was more important to do the set review and get that out to everybody, but that we didn't want to leave M21 without its sunset show. We love doing this version of the show, and so we're going to revisit that now. And also we'll talk a little bit more about the showdown too, after, or right before we do that. Before we get into that though, the show of course is brought to you by channelfireball.com. As we mentioned, tons of content over there, right? You've got this show and, videos. I have another draft video up over there. I know, Luis, you have some as well. And then, Lords of Limited, Court of Calls. If you are looking to try to get better at draft, Channel Fireball is absolutely the place to go. They're very supportive of the Limited community, as you can see. And, that pays off. Yeah, if you're trying to beat people at drafts, it turns out.
Definitely. And stay tuned. We're going to be running more of these kind of like 3-on-3 team draft kind of spectacles, because they were a lot of fun. Ben S has already been barking up my tree about what are we doing next there. So we're gonna get all the best Limited minds together and really determine, well, I guess who wins each particular draft. So it's going to be sweet.
Yeah. And that is, the reception from this was way over the top from what I thought it was going to be. I mean, I knew people were excited about it. I was excited about it, but a team draft is kind of a narrow thing. And you think, some people will be like, listeners of our podcasts would like to check that out and stuff, but it was way bigger than that, way bigger than that. So yeah, I think that we've struck a chord here for sure. And this should be repeated and iterated on and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, make sure you check out Channel Fireball for that. And then, of course, anything that you need over there, you can get CFB Pro, which gives you access to even more premium content. You can sell your cards. They've got multiple ways to do it at this point. You can go on and look at each card and figure out how much they're paying for each one, and then go through the cards that you want to sell specifically, and then package them up and sell them. Or if you have like a bigger collection or you just don't want to be bothered with it, you can do U-Box We Buy, put them in a box, send them in, and they'll go through and sort them and figure out, and then they'll give you an offer, and you can accept the offer and get your money, or you can say, you know what, I'd rather keep my cards, and they'll send them back to you. There's all the details over at Channel Fireball for that stuff. Make sure you check it out. Of course, if you want to support the show directly, oh, and I should mention this about CFB. If you do end up buying stuff, please use the affiliate code LR. That lets them know that we sent you over there, and that's good for the podcast. Patreon, speaking about good for the podcast, the best thing that really ever happened to the podcast was me going, I'm going to take a shot on this Patreon thing. Patreon is the way that content creators get to do the content consistently at a high level over a long period of time. Most of the time, you've probably noticed that it's not that hard to start a new thing. Like, you have a great idea for a podcast, you figure out how to do it. Yeah, it's a lot of work and it's some investment up front, but then you get rolling and, you get 10 episodes in, and then you're kind of like, well, I had all the ideas are kind of gone now, and I need to do a lot more stuff to kind of keep this rolling. And all of a sudden, the time that it takes to do it, the cost that it takes to do it, and then also just the commitment level that you need to just show up every week or every 2 weeks or however often you're making the content starts to fade, and you'll just see, the YouTube channel that you liked or the podcast that you liked sort of disappear. And to me, Patreon is a great way to incentivize and to make it so that these things that you love can keep going further and further and further. And you can go on Patreon and find pretty much any content creator has one on there. And we do too. So patreon.com/limited resources is ours. You can check out all the information there. Luis, any other thoughts on the team draft and stuff like that? The things that stood out to me were, one, it was extremely close, right? All my matches were close. Even the one that I lost to Mr. Metronome, I had mana issues both games, and still both games were close. Like, I got to play Magic, there was no like blowouts on any of the scenarios. And the one I won against Corticals in the last round was extremely close. I helped make it closer myself by making a few judgment errors. But overall, it felt very, very, very close, and it ended up finishing that way too with a 5-4.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely close. I think going in, my honest assessment is that we were favorites, but not by a lot, because those guys draft a ton. I think that overall they've drafted way more than our team. Like, I know that me and BK have drafted a lot less than any of the three of them.
Yeah, I've drafted a ton, but as a team,
I know
definitely,
you've drafted the most on our team for sure. But I think BK literally did 2 or 3 drafts, and I did like 20. But I'm sure all the rest of you guys are in the 50 range by now, if not
probably 100.
More.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I also knew that our team had the advantage of having done many more team drafts. I mean, BK and me both have won team limited Grand Prix. Like, we have a lot of experience with team drafting. And you've also not only participated, but covered tons of team drafting as well. So I think that we had the edge in terms of team draft experience. Those guys, I think, started playing competitively after there were a lot fewer opportunities to team draft that just available. So I thought that we were slightly ahead, but I thought it was going to be close, and then it was really close. Yeah. That it could have easily swung one way or another.
I actually had a pick that I wanted to run by you. Although I admit I can't remember if it was pack 2 or pack 3. I think it was pack 2, but I had moved in on the cleric stack a little bit. But in a team draft, people just rarely pass good cards flying around the table. They will take most of the good removal and any bombs, basically. People understand that you don't just ship those along. And I had a situation where I opened up, I think it was a Malakir Blight Priest or whatever it's called, the 2/1 that drains when it ETBs for your party size. And I really needed cards like that, right? Those are the cards that make the deck hum along. But I also opened Royal Eruption, which is, probably the best common in the set. And also, but it's off color for me. Like, there's no way that's going to make it into my deck. And I had a hard time with that pick because I didn't know where the line was on what was okay to pass, right? Because I know if I open up a bomb, I can kiss that Blight Witch goodbye or Blight whatever goodbye and just be like, I got to take the bomb here, even if it's, you know, in a color that I'm not playing. But what about the best common in this set? Do I have to take that there? Should I be taking that there?
I would have taken the Malakir Blood Priester.
Why can't I remember the name of the stupid
We have no idea what the name of this
Yeah.
card is. I would have taken that because Royal Eruption is better, for sure, but it's not to the level where giving an opponent a Royal Eruption is better than, like, I think you getting the Malakir, I mean,
Blight Priest? I think we're going to say Blight Priest and just roll with it.
I don't even think that's right, though. But you getting that is going to be better, and them getting Royal Eruption, I think, is net better for the team than you getting nothing and them getting whatever the next best card is in the pack for them. The other thing that complicates it is it depends your confidence level of how high you think the likelihood is that they're going to be red, because you could be setting yourself up for a disaster if you hate a card and they weren't going to take it, and then it would have gone to your teammate. Then all of a sudden you and your teammate both get worse cards. You get nothing and they get a worse card, and it doesn't affect the other team at all. And because of that risk, I would generally just tend to take the card you're going to play, because it's honestly in your deck, that actually wouldn't have been much worse than a Royal Eruption. That would have been just the stone perfect card for your deck.
Yeah, and I really needed it. Like I really was like, hey, this would be.
You ended up with 2 relic vials.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, I ended up taking the Royal Eruption because when I'm unsure, I'll default to the more conservative play usually. And that to me was, let's just make sure that nobody has this Royal Eruption. We don't lose to that. Because, you know, sometimes when I do think about team draft, I do think in like a macro sense that like if our team just scoops up all the removal, right? Like, or all the bombs. Like if you just were like, let's just say, who cares how your deck works or whatever, just like turn over your cards. And if you look and it's like, well, there were 4 Royal Eruptions opened and we have 3 or 4 of them, right? And there was a few, 3 Deadly Alliances. We have all 3 of them, right? I just wonder if they can win anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder how that actually plays out, because look, I'm trying to leverage the fact that the current sets, it's not like the old days when you were, drafting till 2 a.m. at the Pro Tour or whatever, where if you didn't take the good cards, or if you did take the good cards from the other team, then they didn't even have a functional deck. That is not the case anymore, right? Now they just get tier 2 commons, which are 4/4s for 5 with an activated ability or whatever. They're totally playable. They can get turned sideways and killed your opponent. So that's the part that I'm not really sure about how to adjust for, because I think that most of the people that really are into team draft are, paper boomers or whatever, right? Who are thinking of it in terms of the cards that they were used to way back in the day, where they used to print just totally unplayable jank cards, where that's just not the case now. I don't know how to adjust for it.
Yeah, I think I did not hate draft super aggressively. I did a couple times, but in general, I think everyone's going to end up with enough playables that it's just not that productive, barring the like kind of top tier rares. Royal Eruption's actually about the line. I think it's actually fine to hate draft Royal Eruption in general. Like if you were looking at Royal Eruption versus like one of the 3-mana 3/2 clerics of any kind, right? There's just a bunch of those that are all kind of similar. So I would have taken the Royal Eruption there because it's an actual like top tier card. But I think that the Malakir Blood Priest is also pretty close to that.
Didn't we decide on Blight Priest together? Didn't we?
No. So it's actually Blood Priest, though.
Oh, it is?
So,
okay.
Yes.
Well, I thought that we could just decide.
Actually look it up.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, super fun format to play against other people. I do wonder if we caught lightning in a bottle a little bit with it, because like you and I sort of jokingly talk trash on the show, but the intrepid editors over at Channel Fireball snipped those comments out and put them on Twitter, so that it was like wrestling.
To be honest, I talked some trash on Twitter too.
Yeah, you did. You're like, hey, I like this, and went for it.
It was great because at one point Ethan Lord Tupperware was like, you know what? I'll be gonna be above this. I'm gonna sit back and let those who talk trash better than me do it, and just say I'm excited for the showdown. And I responded with like, are you gonna let the people who are better at drafting than you do it too?
That's so rough.
To be 100% clear, it was awesome. Those guys are awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was super close. They easily could have defeated us had a card or two been different, and that's how these things go. So I felt that was a very close match, and I look forward to our inevitable rematch.
Yeah. So, whenever that starts to come around, we'll keep you up to date on the on here about when those things are popping up, because I guarantee there will be more after the reception we got on that. Okay, let's talk M21 Sunset Show. We got to say goodbye to this thing, Luis. M21 ended up being a pretty darn good set. I drafted the heck out of this set. And even though core sets are generally kind of forgettable, right? Like if you just throw a random core set at me, unless it's one of the ones that I really like or had like a specific thing about it that I remember, I'll be like, I can't remember the difference between, M11 and M10 or whatever, right? They kind of blur together. But dang it, they got this formula down now. Like they really do for these sets. You see the similarities from set to set, which, that might be a weakness, right? If they do this for too long, then maybe it's not, maybe it does end up being a little boring or repetitive. I don't know. For me, it hasn't. But, two color sets where they have the signpost gold uncommons, and then they run through, kind of a major and a minor mechanic for each of the colors. And then the real focus, one of the things that, boy, it stood out to me, and it's part of my, if I could summarize the set in one sentence, what would it be? I said it managed to stick to the core set principles while still creating some cool, and this is the key word, overlapping archetypes, right? These cards that trigger or add to the synergy in multiple archetypes in their color pairs, that they're part of. Man, these cards really are the glue that makes these sets fun, I think. And I'm really glad that they've decided to keep doubling down on it.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's even a problem if they use this formula for most core sets, because I see the core set as being a pretty powerful tool in getting newer players in while also delivering to invested players. And, they've had core sets that fail at one or both of these, right? Where it's too complicated and doesn't get people in, or it's too simple and is not satisfying to play for the more invested players. If I could summarize the set in one sentence, it would be core set fun with more build arounds than usual.
Yeah.
I think it hits all the notes I want out of a core set.
Yeah. So good job, M20. We'll of course give it a more of a grade and stuff when we get to the end of the thing. Oh, and you know what? Why don't we stop right now and do our Crack-A-Pack before we get further into it? Because this is our last Crack-A-Pack. And again, thanks, Mashi. I actually have a real pack in my hand to crack, which feels nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, hold on a minute. Let me get a little. Wait, this one doesn't smell as good.
What did Mashi do with those packs?
What did Mashi do with this? Yeah. These are printed differently too.
Does this smell like cologne?
Well, it's weird because also, where did he get these? These are the ones that are loose in the pack.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And they're also packed in reverse order or whatever. So I don't know.
Like foreign packs or something like that.
Yeah, he gave us the grade, the tier 2 booster pack that he had laying around. He kept the tightly packed, really good smelling one for himself. Typical Mashi, honestly.
Yeah, obviously.
Also, they're the kind of, they're kind of, God, I don't know what, greasy?
That sheen.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what you're talking about.
I was going to say. All right, first card up, I'm just going to hold them up, I guess, is Rousing Reed. This card ended up being really good.
Yeah, Rousing Reed is a solid card.
Yeah.
Some decks couldn't play it because they didn't have enough low drops, but it was very powerful in the decks that could utilize it.
Yeah, I remember reading in the set review and saying, look, you got to put a lot on an aura to make me want to play it. And I'm like, yeah, you did. Like that is what I want to do. Bone Pit Brute. No. Garrick's Gorehorn. Core set.
Nope.
Nonsense.
I do not believe I ever cast that card.
I don't think I did either, that's a compliment.
I think I had it in one deck. I never cast it.
Celestial, whatever this card's called.
The tapper thing.
The theoretical tapper.
Not a very good one.
Ended up being a D, yeah. Here's Opt. I think this is the best format for Opt I've ever played. I played basically every Opt I ever drafted. You gave it a D
in the set review, but it ended up being closer to a B. So
B, it wasn't a B, but it ended up being a very solid C. I don't think I ever didn't play an Opt, and that's never happened in a format.
You also would third pick them in this set because the Blue Red Spells deck was so good.
It was so good, yeah. Makeshift battalion.
Oh, yep, that 3 and a 3/2 that gets a +1/+1 counter and attacks alongside two other
Card's
creatures.
Actually fine.
I'm on opt right now for what it's worth.
Same. Oh man, stupid
dubs. Pick up some dubs. This card was actually pretty good in this format.
What I need to do, I disagree with that, but what I do need to do is update one of my.
Oh, did you the bad card to lose to?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I'll just remember a lot of dubs, but I do have respect for the card.
I do not respect dub. The good news is I almost never lost a stupid dub because I was drafting all the Ghostlight whatevers. Fetid Imp, 2-mana all-star. You got to play this guy in your black decks. It was just important. I didn't really
cut Fetid Imp from any deck, and I took it fairly highly. I'm still opting for opt.
Yeah, what am I doing? Yeah, I'm still opt as well. Here's Mistral Singer.
It's funny, I would have guessed that this card would be much better than opt, but I felt the blue decks needed opts more than they needed Mistral Singers.
Same, I would take opt. All right, Lore Scale Quaddle.
I do like the Lore Scale Quaddle. I would first pick this over any of the commons I've seen so far, because blue-green is a fine deck, and that card's great in blue-green. Read that thing up.
What would be the best card to cast the next turn after a Lore Scale Quaddle?
I mean, Rousing Read is pretty good. Probably Teferi's Tutelage, though.
Come on, you can do better.
Reign of Revelation? Okay, that one's good.
Hit you for 5, hit you for 6.
Are you taking that over the Quaddle?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think Quaddle's a little bit better, but obviously a single color card is so much better.
Yeah, single color just dominates there. Carrion Grub. I once had a game where I bounced my opponent's Carrion Grub 4 times, and they couldn't even cast it the last time.
That's great.
Yeah, turns out that mill adds up. We have Windscarred Crag as our dual land.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Oh, we got a special card. What are these even called? I don't know, but it's Garruk's Uprising in this cool foil thing.
Oh, I do like Garruk's Uprising.
That's the
4-power build around. Draws you a card when it enters the battlefield if you get a 4-power creature, and then whenever you play a 4-power creature, you draw a card.
Yeah, it's one of the 2 4-power draw you a card build around.
Rise being the other one.
Yeah, this is the better one.
Wow, I would still take Reign of Revelation, but Garruk's Uprising is not far behind.
Can I interest you in a Wooburg rare Sanctum?
Oh, Sanctum of All. Yeah, that card's cute. Obviously, if you're trying to go for a meme draft, I don't blame you. But yeah, Reign of Revelation, keep the door open for both blue red and blue black, where it's excellent. Also, it's excellent in blue green, so it's really only bad in blue white, which that's a great card to start with.
Right, and even if it is in blue white, you can run it as your 1 card draw effect. That's one of the best ones in the set. Okay, so let's get back to the Sunset stuff. What were the best archetypes? You mentioned blue-red spells. That was my number 1. That was the deck I thought was the best in the format.
Yeah, I think blue-red spells was number 1. I think white-green +1/+1 counters, Drowsing Pteranodon deck was second best. A good white-green deck. Well, I think a good white-green deck was actually the best deck. Like, I actually think a good white-green.
A good version of that was the peak.
But I think reliably the blue-red spells deck was on average better.
Yeah, you could do a lot with the commons from the blue-red spells deck. Remember how much better? What were you calling it early in the format? Monastery Mentor, I think.
Oh, yes. Goblin Wizardry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monastery Mentor was sick. I love that card.
Yeah. So, that's a common that you could pick up that no other deck wanted that was really, really excellent in your deck. And then you got cards like Opt and Crash Through to pump up stuff. And those were, again, throwaways for other decks. And then Spellgorger Weird, plus you could do stuff with Mistral Singer or, some of the prowess creatures too. And then if you got the uncommons and rares, it was just that much better. I felt with the green white, it was like Pteranodon into Pride Malkin or whatever was excellent. But you really needed the Conclave Mentor or whatever it was called, the green white uncommon.
I mean, I think that
card was busted.
You needed most was Seasoned Hallowblade. That card was just nuts.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if you don't care about counters, you just want power.
Yeah, well, Basri's Acolyte was one of the more mythic of commons, the 2/3 lifelink that gives 2 +1/+1 counters. Like, there's a lot of starts involving Pteranodon that were just busted.
Yeah.
Like, if you played a turn 2 Drowsing Pteranodon and they didn't have the Scorching Dragonfire for it, and you just, like you said, played a Pride Malkin or a Dub or a Short Sword, there's just a lot of ways to put your opponent under a ton of pressure. Liked Blue-Black Reanimator as well.
Also, just cool that they pulled it off, right?
Oh yeah, it was I think the best iteration of a Reanimator deck I've ever seen in any format, any limited format, because you had Rise from the Grave at common, or Rise Again rather, at common, and you had some big expensive creatures at common and some good discard effects. And then uncommon, you had like Waker of Waves and the Obsessive Stitcher. You had a lot of good support, where the deck ended up being a kind of hybrid control combo deck with the potential for these like really early Gormans or even Spine Megalodons. That was really cool. It was a fun deck to play, and I thought ended up being pretty good. The decks that are best, like look at all these 3 decks, you could get there on all commons, which I think is a great thing for the limited format.
Yeah.
I actually really appreciate when formats are more Pauper. The more king or prince or whatever they are, it's way worse.
Yeah, and I felt like them pulling off the blue-black Reanimator deck in the core set was particularly impressive, just because they managed to make it not feel like you had to give up a lot, right? Like, I think normally it's the discard part that's the trickiest to get right, and they just weren't afraid to put a bunch of looting effects in that weren't like easily repeatable, but like a one-time loot or an occasional loot. And if you were able to do that you only need to do it once to get the big creature into the graveyard, and then you can wait around and find your Rise Again later or whatever. And they really leveraged that. Also, they put cycling or pseudo cycling on the whale and stuff like that, and those helped get those cards in the yard for
I think the big breakthrough here was, I think, someone in R&D realizing, hey, we can make Rise Again at common. We can just make this card a common. Mm-hmm. These cards have always been uncommons, and that's, I think, what made the archetypes so much more fun, and that it came together more, so you could kind of more get it together more reliably. That was a great decision. I don't think it broke anything. I think it was totally fine to do that. And it went against kind of conventional wisdom of, hey, we don't do direct from the graveyard reanimates at common. We always do it at uncommon. Right. And I think questioning those like sacred cows or whatever is pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. So that was sweet. What were some of the more controversial cards? A card that we're going to talk about a lot today, easily the most controversial, was Teferi's Tutelage at uncommon.
Oh yeah, I mean,
God.
When you say controversial, you mean why is this an uncommon instead of a rare?
Yeah, or just what I'm really trying to say is like talked about, right? Like what were people tweeting at us, right? Like what the hell? How is Teferi's Tutelage? That kind of stuff.
It's funny because we're having the same conversation today on Twitter about Ruin Crab and Zendikar. I brought up because I drafted a Ruin Crab yesterday in our team draft, and I ended up not putting it in my deck. And the whole time, chat's like, you got to play Ruin Crab, just, going off. And so I asked some of the folks who I thought would have good opinions on this. And in general, I think the difference between Teferi's Tutelage and Ruin Crab is Teferi's Tutelage proved to be great in basically every single deck, and Ruin Crab is only great in almost every deck. Though it still ended up overperforming. And Teferi's Tutelage was, it was talked about because it went from like, hey, this looks like a really good build around, to, hey, this card's busted, to, hey, like, why is this uncommon? So that was an interesting development to see.
I'm not a big fan of the crab, I have to say.
Well, we'll have that discussion later, but yes, I think there's something to be talked about there too. I mean, here's what I said in Bennis's chat today when I was watching him stream, because he had Ruin Crab. I was like, I think Crab is both good and way overrated.
I think that's a fair way to put it.
It is a good card. You should play it way more often than half the time, but it's also not a first pick slam bomb that you have to play in your aggressive decks. Another card that was controversial, actually, I remember this discussion. This was one of my first kind of in-depth interactions with Alex, actually. Alex Nikolic was Seasoned Hallowblade versus Baneslayer, because some of the guys in their camp were saying like, hey, I would rather take a Seasoned Hallowblade over a Baneslayer Angel.
Yeah, I was part of that Twitter discussion too.
Yeah, and I wrote a long thing on Twitter actually about it. I came down on the Baneslayer side. That's where you are too, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that Seasoned Hallowblade is bad. Seasoned Hallowblade is nuts. It's maybe the best uncommon. It may be behind Teferi's Tutelage.
Right.
So good. But I also like Baneslayer Angel because that'll win you a game no other card can win you, and is great in any deck, whereas the Seasoned Hallowblade ended up not being the best in some of the white decks. Like, white was overwhelmingly aggressive, as it tends to be, so Seasoned Hallowblade, of course, ended up being great in most of the decks you draft, but there were some decks like blue-white Flyers when that came together, which it rarely did, but it did, or like a more black-white Life Gain deck where Seasoned Hallowblade wouldn't be your best card, whereas Baneslayer is basically always going to be the best card in your deck.
Right. And, what it comes down to for me is people, there's a lot still, there always will be best case scenario mentality around, right? Where you view Seasoned Hallowblade as always being on the battlefield on turn 2 if you have it in your deck, and it's not. It's just not, right? And when it is really, really, really good. Like, seriously, it's the best 2-drop in the whole set, right? You play it and your opponent can't kill it for 4 turns and it's hard to block at some point. But you also have to consider scenarios other than that and then add that up against Baneslayer Angel, right? For example, if the board is stalled, if your opponent has a 1-4 or an 0-4 or a 3-4 or anything like that, your Seasoned Hallowblade, you draw it off the top of the library, you play it, and it just sits there. It doesn't do anything. Where Baneslayer Angel dominates that position, right? Absolutely crushes it.
Yeah.
Another scenario is you're getting beaten down. You're getting ran over. Seasoned Hallowblade is actually a pretty good blocker, right? Because it can survive. But at the same time, if you're just getting like trampled over or ran over by a swarm of small creatures or whatever, Baneslayer Angel is 100 times better as a top deck or as a way like you described to get you out of a tough situation. The thing to me, the crux of it is not to compare their best case scenarios. I don't think that that's particularly useful. And for what it's worth, I think they are really close. I think they're about a wash. Like a turn 2 Hallowblade is, probably affects your win percentage roughly as much as turn 7 or whatever on average. Baneslayer Angel comes down.
Hallowblade is ahead there.
Maybe so. Right. So there you go.
I think games where Hallowblade's in your opening hand versus Baneslayer right on curve, let's say turn 5. Mm-hmm. I think Hallowblade actually probably a little higher in this format.
It might edge it out. So I'm giving that up to the Hallowblade, right? The thing that I want to know is the difference in consistency, right? Because there are more games where you simply don't get to cast a card that costs 3 white versus when you cast a card that you get to cast a card that costs 1 and a white. And so for that sample of games where you don't get your second white mana or you never hit your 5th mana, the Hallowblade gets to eat up a bunch of equity there that the Baneslayer doesn't. So does the Baneslayer make that up on the times when you do? And in my mind, yeah, it does. Because you know what? Most games of limited, you do get to 5 mana. And if white's one of your primary color or one of your 2 colors, you're likely to be able to have 2 of that 5 mana be that. And it has, it's one of the best, doesn't have an enter the battlefield creatures, like just stat beast creatures that they've ever printed. It just is. So
yeah, kind of the way I see it is the approach of I want to draft the most synergistic card and optimize for my deck doing exactly its thing. Hallowblade is better there. It fits better in these decks. It's also, I think it is actually better than Baneslayer when you have it on curve and you have the good support for it. The reason I like Baneslayer is I view Baneslayer as a kind of great, the best backup plan in the world, where when my deck isn't doing exactly what I want it to do, Baneslayer, it gets me out of it.
Yep.
When I've got a bad draw, when I mulligan, when I stumble and I can play a Baneslayer, it'll win me the game single-handedly. Whereas the Hallowblade, again, in the right draws, it's better, but it's sometimes you just have draws that are bad, or you have you didn't end up with the deck that completely optimizes for it, and Baneslayer has none of those issues. So here's the thing. I think it is great to compare these cards, and that's something most people wouldn't even think to do. Baneslayer, of course, is better, right? It's the mythic bomb rare, and all that stuff. But the Hallowblade actually, it does get there in terms of what it does for the game and its cost and all that. So it's, I think, a really good thing to be comparing and kind of figuring out, because you don't want to just assume that the mythic rare is always better. But I still think the mythic rare is better. So it was a really interesting discussion. And
one other point before we go on, this is where quadrant theory comes in really handy. Right? Now, you have to weigh this differently, because the hardest part about what we're doing is comparing cards that have different mana costs, right? Of course, Baneslayer is better. It costs 5 mana, right? We're trying to make it relative to the mana cost that you're paying for it. But at the same time, you can put it into the boxes on quadrant theory, and this is where it really becomes clear, right? That when you're behind, Baneslayer Angel is one of the best cards ever printed to cast. Mm-hmm. It is almost impossible to lose a game where Baneslayer Angel is on the battlefield and you are being attacked. It is just, there are so few board states that actually have you dead after that happens. Where Hollow Blade is like, fine, it's like a C+ or something when you're behind. Now, when you're in developing stage, Hollow Blade is the nuts. It is the best possible card. So it does beat Baneslayer there, although Baneslayer also gets a B+ or an A- or something, or an A or whatever. It's just not quite on the level of a 2-drop as powerful as that. And then again, when you look at parity, if you're at board parity, I want Baneslayer every single time. It's much better as a top deck in a late game where nobody's able to really attack than the Hollow Blade is. And then when you're ahead, I guess you could call it a wash, right? So whatever. But to me, that leads me towards Baneslayer. And it goes back to what you said, though. It gets you out of situations that the other one doesn't, where, the other one does give you a bit more win percentage when you're doing the thing you're trying to do. So, Anointed Chorister?
So this is the 1-drop, the 1/1 lifelink for a white, and you can pay 5 mana to give it +3/+3 until end of turn. Mm-hmm. I do actually think we called this one pretty early on.
You did.
Sure. I was giving us both credit, but
yeah, well, credit where credit's due. I mean, I was like, okay, I'll keep an eye on it, but you're the one who pointed that out. Yeah.
And it ended up, I think it ended up being quite good. I don't think that ended up being controversial by the end of the format, but I know that there were some people who were much higher on it in the beginning. It ended up being really, really good. Yeah,
that was a very, and again, it adds to the long list of playable 1-drops that we've seen. It's just, that has really become a thing. What were some of the underrated cards? A couple of cards that definitely started out that way. Feat of Resistance. We liked it. It ended up being really clutch. I mean, seriously, a really powerful card for white. I don't know if it was because the removal was slower in the format, sometimes costing 5 mana, like out of black to try to kill a creature. And you could just get an absolute blowout with Feat. But, I wanted those and I took it highly and I played basically all of them in all my white decks and it really overperformed.
Yeah, Feat ended up being better than I think most people thought on first blush. Just the combination of there being 5 mana removal spells and the +1/+1 counter theme means that it was just an excellent card for your white decks.
And then another
Bad Deal was another one.
Yeah, I liked Bad Deal. Like it didn't see that much play. Yeah, but Bad Deal, especially if you didn't pick up, what was the card we picked out of the Crack-a-Pack again? I forgot what. The stupid name,
Reign of Revelation?
Yeah, Reign of Revelation. If you didn't have that in your blue-black deck or something like that, you could play a Bad Deal. I mean, Bad Deal, if it goes off, 6 mana sorcery, you draw 2 cards, each opponent discards 2 cards, and each player loses 2 life. It is a 4-for-1. Like, you're getting 2 cards into your hand and 2 cards out of their hand, and it's only costing you a card. I mean, that is legit card advantage that could knock out 2 of their late game bombs or their expensive stuff and reload you as you were doing so. It's just tough because it's so expensive that you needed to have at least parity on board and then you needed to be able to afford to pay the life. So it wasn't just like throwing in any old deck, but boy, when it went hard. Like that you don't see 4-for-1s that often.
This card, it's funny because you know how I just said Ruin Crab was good but overrated. Mm-hmm. This card was bad but underrated.
Yes, yes, that's it.
No, it's so like these things aren't binary. Cards aren't just good or bad. It's a sliding scale, and it's like Ruin Crab's like a 7 that people think is a 9. Bad Deal was like a 5 that people thought was a 2.
Yeah.
So it fit in some decks and it could win some games in a landslide. You're playing blue-red spells and you've got your good, you set up to play this attrition game and your black-green opponent just goes Bad Deal on turn 6 and you're like, wow, that was really bad for me. Like that's the sort of thing that it could win you some great games, but it was also a blank against red, white, or green, white. So you're not like over the moon about having to play this card.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's actually funny. So this dovetails nicely for our next question. Which card had your favorite artwork? Actually, for me, it was Bad Deal by Zoltan Boros. And the reason is it's the meme of the 2 guys holding hands, like the like clenching like the handshake, the epic handshake meme.
Yeah.
And I like having meme templates that are on Magic cards. It was great. It's like it's like me, BK, doing light skills at the beginning of the game. Like
and is there blood or something on it too? Like
yeah, because what I think the implication is they both cut their palm and then they're shaking on it, and you see the blood running down their arm, because that's the way people used to seal deal. Yeah. I don't think people do that anymore, though.
Yeah, I think they went from blood to spit to just go ahead and shake hands. We're good. Yeah. Body fluids can be set aside for this transaction. My favorite artwork was Indulging Patrician by Miranda Meeks, because it has this kind of two-stage thing. If you look at it just like Far Away as just a regular card, you get it, right? There's like a vampire holding a dead person, and then it has this cool, like, sort of blood moon behind it with these bats flying around, and it just has like a striking kind of far away visual cues, like it just hits you and you kind of know. But then if you actually take time to look a little closer, it's pretty sinister. So she's got blood running down her face, and you can see the two hole marks in the guy's neck, and he even still is like holding his hand up, like, he's either still alive a little bit or just died. And then if you look even closer at the expression on the patrician's face, she just does not give a care. Like, she's just like, it was lunch. Like, don't care particularly. And I like that when the artist can deliver like a little bit more of a story if you look close, but also don't give up the idea of just like, here's a strong visual statement from far away. So well done. That was my favorite one. What were the best build around cards in this set?
Experimental Overload, so the blue-red spell that got a spell back, then made an XX for the amount of spells you had. And basically all the other spell build-arounds, they just all got there. The blue-red spells deck was awesome. So, you had just a ton of different Shipwreck Dowser, the 5-mana 3/3 prowess that got a spell back. And I would even put like Goblin Wizardry kind of in this category, the prowess, make 2/1/1 prowess creatures card. Like all of the cards that involved spells were just excellent. Likewise, Rise Again and all the reanimation stuff worked out very nicely. Yeah,
very good.
So the ones that didn't get there for me were like the life gain payoffs, like Griffin Airy. Like, I just don't think the life gain deck was good.
No, you're wrong. No. So what happened with it was they didn't support the archetype enough, so you couldn't get it very often. But when you did, it was very good. Like, I like that. I think that might have been the best deck in the format when it came together.
I think just the threshold needing to be 3, which it was for most of the cards, was high enough that it made it a lot harder to assemble. It's not
very hard to assemble.
It's not like the Cleric's deck in Zendikar where you can play a Gloomhunter on turn 2, because that's the way you're supposed to sequence them, and then play your life gain payoff on turn 3. and reap the full rewards from it.
Man.
Don't think I wasn't watching that.
I know. God dang it. I knew it right away, too. I was like, dang it, I did this wrong. I think I got used to always having a 3-drop follow-up
cleric.
Yeah,
you have 3-drop clerics in your deck. But no, the life gain payoffs, like, I'm not going to disagree that the deck couldn't be great when you got it together. I think it was unreliable enough that you were not supposed to first pick a Griffin Airy.
For sure. I agree. You know what you were supposed to do, strangely? Wheel it. Like, that's how that deck played out.
So rarely came together.
That's what I mean. Like, but when it did, it was awesome. Like the payoffs for that deck were seriously really good. Although I do have to say, it is funny looking at Griffin Airy now that I've been drafting Roost of Drakes for a month or whatever. It's like, it's such a joke how good Roost of Drakes is compared to all of these other things that try to make these 2/2 flyers. It's not even close. Anyway. What about the Sanctums? These were the Sanctums the
Sanctums were fun, but I don't think they were particularly good either.
Okay. I consider them like the training wheels build arounds, right? Like,
because they just tell you on the card.
They're just like, here you go, right? Like,
I mean, again, if you could get Black Sanctum plus any other Sanctum going, it was really, really good. So I definitely had played them in a variety of decks when I got them together, but it was not, I would not pick a bad Sanctum first, and I would hesitate to even pick a good Sanctum early unless I had a reason to do so, just because they were just hard. It was a cycle of uncommons, and you needed to get multiples of them.
Double Vision, boy, was this one bad. I did try it multiple times to see if I could make it go, for science. And I mean, the first time I did, I was so disappointed because I actually fully drafted around it and like had it. Like, I had everything that you would want for that type of a deck. And I even found the turn where I could get my Double Vision down and have mana available and even get to untap with it and stuff. And I didn't remember that it was only the first instant or sorcery each turn. And I thought I was just about to like stone cold go off with like 3 ops in a row or whatever. And I just cast the second one and nothing happened. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And I never played Double Vision again. It was a flop. Maybe a commander card.
I had it be okay in one deck, but in general, I don't think it was good. It was fun though.
And then, there was the Furious Rise and Garrick's Uprising that we talked about too. Good cards. Those were good. You could build around those.
The red green deck was totally fine.
Yeah. Was this a Prince or a Pauper set?
Pauper by a mile. You could build fantastic decks without even an uncommon in them, which I think is just generally great. I like having good, powerful uncommons, and of course, it's fun to have good, flashy rares. But sets being the closer the set can be to where you don't need to have high rarity cards, whether they be rares, mythics, or uncommons, to have a good deck, the better it is, because that's just what happens most of the time.
So I have a question then, because here's an argument you'll hear from. I'm not really sure exactly who this came from, but this is an argument that gets put forth about bombs in Limited.
We need the bad players to be able to win with bombs.
So if that's the case, why don't they put a ton of them in these core sets? So that the players can go, like, I got a sense for winning and feeling what it's like to cast a really powerful card.
Sure. I think that's true that you could maybe do more of them for that reason. But I think that would be more appropriate in a core set than a non-core set. Okay. So yeah, I agree with.
So Luis wants the Titans back.
Well, I think that it's good to have cards that let you beat people who are better than you. Mm-hmm. I think that in general that leads to more fun and Magic overall. And honestly, if you're good and you lose to one of these cards, like you can kind of just blame the card and not worry about it. Or you can have these games where you beat this like great rare out of your opponent's deck because you were so cunning, and that can be satisfying too. So. Right. I think that they could have actually gone higher on bombs in this set, but I like where it landed, so I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay, what's the "it's a bad card, but I love it anyway" award for you?
Double Vision. I mean, when I cast Frantic Inventory and doubled it with Double Vision, like that was living the dream right there.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Mine is Meteorite. I absolutely love Meteorite, and I think I cast 0 of them for the entirety of this format. But I love that card. Like that is a cool design, and it's a cool card. And if it's good in a format, I usually like the format, but unfortunately it has
been good in other formats. Mm-hmm. It just was not particularly good here.
No,
it is a cool design.
What about the I literally never win with it, but it always seems to beat me card?
For me, that actually was dub.
Yeah.
Like when they dubbed their Pteranodon, I'm like, there's so many answers to this, and then I didn't have it.
Right. Yeah. You know how much risk you just took? Good game, but that was very risky the way you won that.
See, here's the thing. Yeah. You shouldn't have won. I would never say that to my opponent, but I did lose to a lot of dubs. What about you?
For me, it was dub also, but honorable mention to Run Afoul, where people occasionally would play Run Afoul in the main deck in best of one when I was going for Mythic.
Your opponent sacks a flyer or something like that?
Yeah, green instant, target opponent sacks a creature with flying. There was a game where I beautifully crafted a scenario where I cast a card that I didn't even want to have, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's like the 7-mana dragon. It has fire breathing or whatever.
Oh, yeah, the uncommon, the 7-mana 6/6 flyer, the Hellkite.
Yeah. What is it called?
Hellkite Underlord.
Underlord? Hellkite Punisher.
Well,
Punisher.
It's not Hellkite Overlord, so I just took a stab.
Hellkite Punisher, which is a card that is really powerful, obviously, and I had a green-red ramp deck. But it's not a great card, right? It's a little too slow for the format, but I had it in there and I ramped the thing out, and that was kind of my coup de grace. I'm like, all right, and I got you. You only have 1 card left. You would have used your removal on my other creature if you had it. We're done here. And they're like, Run Afoul. And I'm like, oh my God, 7 mana just evaporated to their crappy sideboard card they had in the main. So that's going to win the award for me, this time. What was the my opponent played this, so now I must win or quit Magic forever card for you?
Honestly, for me, it's duress because I always think it's so bad to main deck duress in these formats. It's just really not a thing that I recommend doing. Mm-hmm. And every time I'm making a draft video and I get duressed, I go on this rant about how duress is so bad. And then I really hope to not lose those games. So see, here's the thing. If you have duress in your hand and you cast it, and you traded 1 for 1, you spent a mana, they spent 0 mana, but you got a card. Okay, probably a better card because Duress sucks. But you just miss like a third of the time or something. And imagine you top decking this card. It's such a bad ratio of payoff to risk that I think you should not run it unless it's post sideboard and you're playing against a deck full of counters or expensive spells or whatever. But main decking it's just not good. And then, your opponent casts it sometimes and you really did want to beat them afterwards.
Right. And this is where the bar needs to be higher, right? This is a thing that we try to teach on the show too, is that you need to expect a lot from every card you put into your deck. People feel good if they hit with a duress, right? Yes. It doesn't matter what. They're just like, well, I got something, so I'm good. And it's like, no, you need to hit good cards or key cards or more often or whatever. And that's really what we're trying to get at there. For me, it's Necromentia, right? That's the, go into your library and your land or your opponent graveyard in hand and pick a card and take all that card out of it. If they play that, then it's like, you better win. Like your career's on the line at that point.
Oh yeah.
What was the biggest groan test? I have to say the biggest groan test was easily Teferi's Tutelage, right?
It's not even close.
They played it on 3 and you're just like, oh my God.
I had multiple games in this format where they cast it on 3 and I just scooped the game. Because it's like, wow, well, I'm playing blue-red spells. I'm not going to kill you for 5 or 6 more turns here. Well, I guess I'm dead.
Yep.
It's just like, what? There's no real point in playing this out.
Yeah. It was a mistake, right, to put it in uncommon. Like, that just shouldn't have been there.
What was that?
I'm asking you if it was a mistake to put it at uncommon.
Oh, I think so. I don't think it's a very satisfying rare. I think that maybe it's okay as the best on. I don't know. I think
can we just not have it, or
yeah, I would prefer just to not make the card. I don't think it adds much, and I think it does take a lot away. I think it's pretty unfun to play.
Yeah, people do love milling, but they also hate being milled out. Another card that's a good groan tester was Primal Might. That was the card that
nuts.
That's the type of card that was really powerful, but in a way that you could feel like you were okay on this board state, and then you lost. Like you lost your best blocker and were facing down a massive creature,
I mean, it's the sort of thing. How many games have you played in Magic where, they have to have a removal spell and a way to do 4 extra damage for me to lose this. This was that card all rolled up into one convenient little bundle.
It was.
Also, it was 1 mana Prey Upon. I mean, this card's seeing plenty of constructed play. It's not a weak card.
Yeah, super powerful. What was the most frustrating bad card to lose to, or maybe a card that you will not miss playing against or that annoyed the crap out of you besides Teferi's Tutelage?
So looking at this, I think we need to revise our questions here, because this is just the third question that's the same question.
Yeah. I mean, the groan test and frustrating bad card to lose to are different. What was the other one?
Also, what is the card my opponent played, so I have to win or quit Magic?
Too. Also, we could differentiate them a little bit.
Also, I literally never win with it, but it always beats me card. These are all like kind of variants of the same question.
No, they are not. They are not. You can't just say these things and have them be true. That is completely untrue. You would never, ever, ever pick the same card for Groan Test as the one that you just mentioned. Those are just different.
No, but mostly I think it's the card I never win with but always beats me, the card that now that they've played it I have to beat them, and the card that's bad and you lose to it. These are all different approaches.
Okay, we can cut one of them, but they are different questions. They are.
Except your terms.
like for example, what's the most frustrating bad card to lose to? Yeah, sure. If somebody said Duress or Necromentia, I mean, if one of us chose that, it could fit the same thing as my opponent played this and now I must quit Magic forever. So those are pretty similar. So we could combine those. But we can't get rid of Groan Test because it's like it's been grandfathered in.
The Groan Test, I think makes a lot more sense. That's describing a very different experience.
Okay, so let's do it right now.
Describe cards we don't like that we lose to sometimes.
Yeah. So the thing is that what I'm going for with my opponent play this now. So my opponent played this and now I have to win or quit Magic forever. It's usually like a 1-drop. Or something like that isn't playable, right? Like they play 1/1 for 1 with no ability or some, and you're like, okay, this isn't just like a bad card. This just is like, if I lose to this, my career's on the line. Where frustrating bad card to lose to is similar. So should we cut one of them?
Yeah, the frustrating bad cards to lose to.
Okay. No, but I mean, like, should we cut it from Sunset shows forever?
Yes.
Okay. Kill it from here.
It's done.
Well, no, I have to do it because I have the template. All right. It will be stricken from the record. What was the bombiest bomb, the card you hoped most to open up in your sealed pool or whatever?
I think that any of the loose cycle of mythic creatures that cost like 5 mana or 6 mana. So we're talking Terror of the Peaks, Elder Gargroth, Baneslayer Angel, Massacre Worm are all top. I think Terror of the Peaks is probably the best of them because
that sounds right.
If you ever untap with it, you win just like all these other cards, but it can get you out of more situations, and it even nugs them for 3 if they try to mess with it. Yeah,
Elder Gargaroth is right there too, right? Similar to Baneslayer in its ability to kind of like stabilize a bad board for you. Mine was actually Ugin, and that's not like, to me, that's because I love that card. It also does get you out of basically any scenario feasible in this set, which is cool. But the fact that it costs 8 versus like 5 for the Baneslayer, the Gargaroth, and the Terror does mean it is actually a tier down. But I don't care. I'm still taking Ugin because I love him.
I think Ugin is certainly the most impactful card when you cast it. It costing 8 means I have it. I would rather open Terror of the Peaks than Ugin, but we're again quibbling over which mythic rare that is great that we're going to first pick.
Right. Exactly. What was the best common for each color? I have Basri's Acolyte for white. I think that one's not close. Blue Roaming Ghostlight?
Yeah, I mean,
can I give it to the
I'm not
Ghostlight?
actually kidding. I'm not actually kidding. I think Opt is in competition for best common.
It is up there for sure. It really is.
This is wild for a card that got a D on the set review. But
let's see.
I like Roman Ghostlight here, and then black certainly Grasp of Darkness because it costs 2 mana. Red definitely Scorching Dragonfire, and then green. By the end of the format, I think Drowsing Pteranodon was actually quite a bit better than Llanowar Visionary, though Llanowar Visionary is an excellent card and easily the second best common.
Yeah, agreed. And coming in, I would have thought that it was Llanowar Visionary. I would have picked that for sure.
Definitely.
Good job, Drowsing
Week 1, that's where we were.
Yeah, for sure.
He woke up.
What was the mythic uncommon for the set? I mean, I have to give it to Tutelage.
It was Tutelage, I believe, but
we've been talking about
can't be far behind.
No, God, I almost want to give it to it just because, like, this feels like recency bias because if you would have asked me this on week 2 of the format, I would have said Teferi's Tutelage for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I should stick with that. I'll say Teferi's Tutelage with a narrowly edging out Seasoned Hallowblade. There can only be one, though, right? We can't have 2 mythic uncommons. What was the worst card in this set? The biggest blank, the most last picked. I picked one that I just thought missed the hardest because maybe it could be really cool. Obviously, it's printed for Commander or something else, but it's Chromatic Orrery.
Yeah, I think Chromatic Orrery was a 7 mana card that didn't impact the board and then also needed work from you to get value from it later. So that's all those things added together is just a gigantic miss.
And here's the thing, right? This is why I picked it. So it's a 7 mana ramp card. Even though I think there's one card in this set that costs more. It's like Ugin, and I think that's it. Okay. So you've got your 7 mana makes 5 mana card. And then if you want to draw cards, it's 5 mana and tap it. So you have to wait a turn and then dump 5 mana in to draw probably 2 cards, maybe 3 on occasion. So, you're a cool 12 mana into your draw to at this point. And it doesn't, you can't use the mana from it to activate it. So yeah that's a miss.
I mean, Grim Tutor and Necromentia were not super far behind in terms of how bad they were as well.
Yeah.
But I would say that Orrery was a good place to be.
What about the most begrudgingly playable? I have this in a very narrow race between 2 blue cards. One of them is Wishcoin Crab and the other one is Wall of Runes. Who do you want to give it to?
I think that the Crab's a little better because it actually can impact a board. Whereas the Wall of Runes, I just felt never really did much for you.
No, I know, but which one's more begrudgingly playable?
No, I think the Crab because I just wouldn't play the Wall.
Okay,
so I would begrudgingly play the Crab. The Wall is worse than the Crab. I tended not to play.
It wouldn't even be playable for you. All right, Wishcoin Crab it is. What card will you miss drafting?
The card I missed drafting most, I think, was probably Goblin Wizardry. it was just the exact card I liked, where you got to go end of turn Goblin Wizardry, play 2 spells, attack you for 6 out of nowhere. I mean, I called it a Monastery Mentor for a reason. I think the card is really sweet.
It was really sweet. Really a good card.
What about you?
Well, I picked a really great card, but the reason I picked it is because of how it changed the way the game plays out. Maze Mind Tome. I loved the little mini game on, okay, my opponent's beating me down. I'm just going to start scrying and activating this because I want to get to the 4 life and, you know, get things rolling as quickly as possible versus, hey, we're in a stalemate against a control deck. I'm drawing 4 cards off of this stupid thing. I'm going to sit here and activate this Maze Mind Tome every time with the 2 mana, and I'm going to get my cards. And you're going to watch me sit here and just keep ticking it up over and over and over again. And I love that it had that. It was able to be dynamic in that way. And obviously it's also just really powerful. But that's not why I picked it. I picked it because of the little mini game that you get to do where you have to size up what your opponent's up to before you decide what to do with it.
That card sees some constructed play too.
Really? In standard or?
Oh. It's actually seen play as far back as modern. The gain 4 life part is actually pretty good against aggro decks. And so decks like Eldrazi-tron that just have a lot of access to colorless mana use it as a pretty good way to get extra cards against control, extra life against aggro.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's cool. What was the Martialist card in this set and the LSV-ist card in this set?
I mean, for me, I think it's Frantic Inventory. All it does is draw cards, and if you get a lot of them, you draw more cards. And then for you, it's got to be Roman Ghostlight. I don't think that's even close.
I love cards like that. I will adjust where and how I take them based on how the format plays out. But it turns out Roaming Ghostlight was one of the better mana wars in recent memory. It was awesome in the format, and it was what I wanted to be doing on turn 5. I have a million of those for sure. My soapboxiest card for the whole set was definitely Teferi's Tutelage for the reasons that we've described here. We don't need to keep hammering it, but for everything that we said, it has definitely been the card that I've talked about the most and thought about the most, especially early in the set. What card do you still have to read when it's cast against you?
Niambi Esteemed Speaker is the blue-white, like, flash 2/1 that I think returns a creature, and then you can pay some mana and discard like a legendary card, and then you get to draw 2 cards.
That is right.
It just does a bunch of weird stuff, but
you also gain life equal to the bounced creature's converted mana cost, by the way.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
There we go.
It turns out I need to read that one too, because I just looked it up. The one I always have to read is Idol of Endurance. Can you tell me what that does?
So I think it's like 2 mana, and it exiles a bunch of 3 or less cost creatures from your graveyard, and then you pay 3 and tap, and you can play 1.
That's pretty close. That's really close. It's 3 mana to cast, and then 1 and a white, tap it. Until end of turn, you can cast one of those cards without paying its mana cost. So,
okay.
And it exiles all of your converted mana cost 3 or less creatures. Yeah, I if they cast it, I'm reading it. Like even today, even right now, I'm just like, I just always forget what it does. I remember when I first read it, I thought you got all of them back, but then that seemed a little silly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the important stuff here. From a design and development aspect, how did this set fare? How are the mechanics? What were some of the wins and the losses for M21?
This set wasn't really breaking new ground. Like I think it was a pretty much like a very well executed core set. So you had a bunch of good build arounds. You had, a really good focus on fundamentals where people could draft this set and not really understand how to use build arounds or really go hard on them and still have a very good experience. Like you don't need to know exactly how to draft the blue-red spells deck or the blue-green card draw deck to just draft a deck full of 2 colors, good cards from those colors end up being okay. Of course, the ceiling is higher if you do know the build arounds, but I do think that it was not a set that was too unapproachable while also having enough depth. I think there was a lot of ways to really get into it and draft these cool decks. So I wouldn't say this like taught me anything particularly new in that sense. Like it wasn't breaking new ground, but the wins were, this is exactly what I think a core set should be. So I was impressed by it.
Yeah. To give it like a grade, I would say relative to other sets, it was like a very solid B, maybe even a B plus, and relative to core sets, it was an A. Like, I think that this was just exactly what you want out of a core set, giving enough to the new players to understand some of the subtleties to limited that aren't just power and toughness and removal, but build arounds and synergies and stuff like that, but not making it overwhelming, not overdoing it where a newer player just gets completely overwhelmed. A lot of this stuff just sort of happens naturally, especially if you're playing on arena, you know, you draft life gain or whatever, and you get triggers popping up and you're just like, hey, sweet, this is cool. And you can learn it. But if you're not ready for that yet, if you weren't at that stage of your Magic development where you were kind of seeing synergies and build arounds and stuff like that, you could just draft creatures that had power and toughness, and occasionally you get a little bonus here and there, but you could still play a playable deck. And to me, that's really perfection. I mean, remember, the bar is intentionally lower on complexity for these. So it would actually be, I would give it a worse grade if it was more complex, even though I would probably like the set more for myself.
Yeah.
Great core set. Seriously, this is the template. To me, just keep shifting around these numbers and powers and toughnesses and which synergies are, assigned to which colors and that kind of stuff. And this is a thing that you could do probably for the rest of your life and still have fun doing it, even at the stage that you and I are at with our Magic development. So there you go.
Yeah. I feel like if a core set gets us to draft as many times as this did, then it's a success, because this one was not overcomplicated, yet it hit the right bar for us to just draft it a million times.
Yeah. And I did. I was drafting it right up until Zendikar came out, which is, that's about the biggest compliment I can give. What did the format teach you? Maybe something that made you better at limited or a takeaway from it?
I think the biggest two things. One is that one drops, I feel like we kind of need to revisit what one drops do, because our rule, or not rule, but our suggestion that, like, hey, here's a good heuristic, one drops tend not to be impactful enough in limited, has started to change just because they keep printing more powerful one drops. And
for sure,
as a result, I'm not as biased against them as I used to be. The other thing is that the kind of half build around decks can be really awesome. The blue-black Reanimator deck was like Reanimator with a light touch. And most of the time, build arounds punish you when you don't get there. This rewarded you when you got there, but didn't really punish you when you missed, because you were able to kind of have this control deck with a light Reanimator theme. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, those are, I don't know if you can do that for every archetype, but man, are those good when they work, right? Because, if you put a looter in your deck that's really good for Reanimator, well, if you never draw anything that has anything to do with Reanimator, it's still pretty good? A looter, right? Like it still gets you land drops you need to hit, or gets rid of excess lands, and you're really not paying any heavy cost for doing that. And any of those type of effects are really excellent. Red blue encouraging you to put opt in your deck. You'd prefer to have it trigger 3 prowess creatures and make a token or something like that. But if you just cast opt in a normal limited deck, that's fine. Like that again, it lets you hit your land drops or lets you not hit any more lands. I would love to see as much of that as I can get. Another example is Revitalize. 1 and a white, instant, gain 3 life, draw a card. That's not the type of card we would advocate for putting in a random white deck. But you know what? It could be a lot worse, right? You're still getting your card back. It's not mana intensive too much. It only costs 2 mana, and you're even getting a little bit of a life bump that might help you survive to use that card. It's the cards that you have to cast that just don't do anything unless you're doing the thing that are a lot rougher. Furious Rise is a good example, right? That forces you to put those 4 power creatures in your deck because it just doesn't do anything on its own at all. It's just, you cast it, and if you don't draw a 4 power creature, you just rip it up and throw it away. Nothing even happened. I like the ones, like you said, that let you kind of dabble, and then, they can do powerful things, but don't have to be everything for your deck. I also, by the way, like the more committal versions existing too, but I like for core set to have them the way they are here. Overlapping stuff. I've talked about it earlier, but I want to emphasize that this is a design principle that I want to see Wizards really triple down on. And it looks like they have, which is, Mind Drain from Zendikar Rising, right? The green, the 2 and a green that puts a +1/+1 counter and draws you a card and you gain a life or whatever, right? These
Scale
ones,
the Heights.
Yeah, Scale the Heights, Mind Drain that mills them and draws you a card and gains you, or makes them discard and you gain life and all this type of stuff. I love these. They just can fill the little corners in on your build around deck in a really cool way on a card that traditionally wouldn't have done that, right? That would have been a green pump spell, Scale the Heights. Mind Drain would have just been, a Mind Rot effect. And just adding these little tiny riders to these cards means that in a pinch, you can play them in a synergistic deck and actually have them interact with your synergistic deck rather than just standing on their own. And when it comes to the key cards, the key commons and stuff like that you actually really want in your deck that overlap, I love that too. Absolutely love it. And I want to see more of it, especially in the expert level sets. So I'm all about that. I think that that's going to be an absolute key to the success of Limited going forward is the glue cards, as long as they can keep them in check. If they become too good, then it's too much. But, yeah, I love those. Okay, Luis, time for the big question. What was your absolute favorite card in the format?
So we actually answered the same thing here.
We did.
Waves. Yeah, I really liked Waker's design. It was an awesome 7-drop to cast, but you could also just, kind of use it for sleight of hand early, while also it put itself in the graveyard so you could reanimate it. It was just always awesome, never dead. It was really cool.
Yeah, awesome card to reanimate. Also awesome card to just cast, because sometimes in these decks you're like, all right, well, I don't have a way to give back, so I just have to wait till I get to 7 mana. But this gave all your opponent's creatures -1/-0, and that meant that when you did cast it, you had a much better chance to actually survive rather than just some big 7/7 like you can't kill it whale or whatever. Yeah, Waker of Waves, that's cool. I don't think we've ever taken the same card, have we? I don't remember doing that.
Probably not.
Yeah, that's
maybe
awesome.
Your taste is getting better.
Wait a minute. Why isn't your taste getting better? I mean, the real story is I didn't take Roaming Ghostlight, which I absolutely loved. But yeah, I Waker of Waves was my number one as well. All right. That's going to do it, for this episode of the show. We're saying bye-bye to M21. And of course, we'll be back, full on into Zendikar Rising again as too. We just didn't want to have a set out there that didn't get a Sunset show, especially a set that we both liked,
Leaving it hanging there,
Yeah, there you go. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. Don't forget our sponsor, Channel Fireball. If you head over there, you can find all the stuff that we talked about earlier, CFB Pro and, how to sell your cards. And of course, you can just do the good old thing. You can just order Magic cards, right? You can get singles, booster packs, booster boxes at Channel Fireball. Zendikar Rising is available now. If you do decide to pick something up, please use the affiliate code LR to let them know that we sent you over there. And with that, it's the end of the show. We'll see you next week.
So, Marshall, can you estimate how many hours a day you watch Among Us at this point?
I would say 3.5 on average. And that's conservative.
That's not bad. I would have guessed more.
It's probably like I would say most days I watch over 5 hours. I was trying to be like, maybe there's a day when I don't, but that probably doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I love watching Among Us.
It's so good. It's a game that is almost as fun to watch, and sometimes more fun to watch than it is to play. And I played a ton of it, but also watch a ton of it. If you haven't checked it out, I mean, I've streamed a ton of it over the last couple of weeks. So have most Magic streamers. Yeah. I've been playing in a couple different lobbies, and it's really cool. I wanted to talk about some advanced imposter strategies, since for those of you who do play the game, again, you should try it if you haven't. I wrote a guide on Channel Fireball. You can look that up, but here's a couple tips if you want to learn how to play the imposter better. So for those of you who don't know how to play the game, 10 players, 2 of them are imposters. You're all crew on like a spaceship or at a space station, and the crew has all these tasks to do to win the game. If they complete all their tasks, like refuel the engines and plot the navigation course and all that. Whereas the imposters, their goal is to kill everyone. And the imposters, there's 2 of them. Every time someone reports a body that's found or calls an emergency meeting, there's voting. And if you get the most votes, you're airlocked, you're tossed off the ship. So crew can toss imposters off the ship that way, but they have no other way to kill the imposters, where of course imposters can kill the crew. So here's a couple things. One is the basic kind of like carry imposter / kill imposter. So you've got two imposters, and one of them is the bloodthirsty imposter. They're the one who's kind of roaming around the map, hunting by themselves, trying to get off kills in secluded areas. And then when the meeting gets called, like what'll usually happen is day one, right? That's how we kind of break this up between meetings. Day one, they'll get 1, maybe 2 kills. A meeting is going to get called, and if there's like, let's say 1 kill, there's probably 2 or 3 people who have no real good alibi and a bunch of people who are pretty much cleared from that kill. And they're going to be one of the people without a good alibi, but that's usually not enough to get you thrown off the ship on day one, because you just can't do that to everyone who doesn't have an alibi. There's too many people. So then on day 2, their goal is to get like 2 more kills. And often this is where they get airlocked. That the next meeting gets called. And let's say, especially when you're down to 6 people, they're like, hey, they were suspicious round 1. Now they don't have a good alibi there, or they're seen in the area. And here is where the carry imposter. So this is the imposter who has done little to no killing, but here's the key. They have to be around other crews so they have alibis. If you're not around other crew, you got to be killing. If you're not around people or killing, you're doing a really bad job. So here, I actually won a game like this today. What happened was my other imposter partner got like 3 kills. And then on the vote on 5 people, I was like, we gotta. It was Koji, this other person I was playing with. I was like, Koji was seen in the area of the last kill. They were suspicious yesterday. We've got to airlock Koji, and we talked it through. We ended up throwing them off the ship, and then the next round, there's 4 people left. I was in a group with 2 other people. I just killed one of them in front of the other person, reported the body, and then in the meeting, I was like, I got Koji off. Koji was clearly an imposter. This is why I'm crew. And the other person who got to vote, because at that point there's only 3 people left. I just have to convince one of the other people. They're like, yeah, that's a good point. I think that you're probably crew. They voted for the other person, and we won. So the tricky part is you can't talk to the other imposter. There's no outside communication. So you kind of have to guess, and it helps when you've played with other people. In this particular case, I didn't really know the strategy my imposter partner would be using, but after seeing how many kills there were on day 1, I'm like, you know what? I think I can actually do this. So it can work out really well. And then the strategy of voting out your own partner in that case can be really good. And the funny thing is, what I was saying also lines up with how crew works too. I looked very crew-like in that particular case, and so that's why it worked. Another tactic you can use is you both just travel in pairs and try to get off a couple double kills. Maybe don't get voted out the first day, and then the second day just go on a rampage. You can definitely win games that way as well. But I think the hard carry plus the mass murder imposter strategy can be really tough to beat, because the thing is, when you get down to just a couple people, if you did a good job staying hidden, you're at least forcing a 50-50, a coin flip, where you might just win that, and 50% is a very good win rate. The other thing is you can do things to make yourself look less suspicious, like I did during that. So a lot of depth to this game, and I anticipate streaming a lot more of it.
I'll be watching, buddy.